Chosen one. You are not 100% human. The mystery of your origin. Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night, your heart pounding, not from a nightmare, but from a dream so vivid, so otherworldly, that for a moment you questioned which reality was real? Have you ever looked around at the people in your life, your family, your friends, your community, and felt like you were watching them through glass, like you were speaking a language they could never quite understand? Have you ever felt homesick for a place you've never been? Listen to me carefully. What I'm about to tell you will either set you free or make you close this video and walk away. But if you're still here, if something in your spirit is stirring right now, then this message was meant for you. You are not entirely from here. That restlessness you've carried since childhood, that burning in your chest when you see injustice, when you witness spiritual blindness, when you feel the weight of a world that seems to be spinning off its axis. That's not depression. That's not anxiety. That's not a character flaw. That's your divine DNA crying out. You see, chosen one, you've been living like an eagle raised in a chicken coop. You've been told to keep your head down, to fit in, to stop asking the deep questions. You've been convinced that the ache in your soul is something to medicate, something to ignore, something to be ashamed of. But what if I told you that ache is actually recognition? What if that feeling of not belonging isn't a curse, but a calling? What if that sense of being different isn't isolation, but initiation? There's an ancient secret hidden in the pages of Scripture that most believers never discover. A mystery so profound that when you understand it, everything changes. Your struggles suddenly make sense. Your isolation suddenly has purpose. Your battles suddenly reveal their true nature. You are not 100% human. Before we go deeper into this revelation that will shake the very foundation of how you see yourself, I want to pause and thank every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead. But right now, before we unlock this mystery together, if you've ever felt what I'm describing, that otherworldly homesickness, that divine restlessness, write this in the comments or whisper it over your life. I know who I am. Let your spirit bear witness. Let heaven hear your declaration. Let the enemy know you remember. Because chosen one, what you're about to discover will change everything. And there's no going back. Are you ready to remember who you really are? Do you remember the exact moment when you first realized you were different? Not just quirky different, not just unique different, but fundamentally, spiritually, cosmically different from everyone around you. Was it in third grade when the other kids were playing games that felt meaningless to you, while you sat alone wondering why you could sense things they couldn't see? Was it at your first job when you watched your co-workers chase promotions and paychecks, while something deep inside you screamed that there had to be more to existence than this endless cycle of work, sleep, repeat? Or maybe it was that devastating moment when you poured your heart out to someone you trusted, shared your deepest spiritual insights, your God-given visions, your divine downloads, only to watch their eyes glaze over with confusion, pity, or worse, fear. You see, chosen one, there's a profound loneliness that comes with carrying heaven's frequency in an earthbound world. You've felt it your entire life, haven't you? That crushing weight of being misunderstood, not just by strangers, but by the people closest to you. Your own family looked at you like you were speaking a foreign language when you talked about the things that mattered most to your soul. You laughed differently than they did. While they found humor in surface-level entertainment, you were moved by the deeper ironies of human existence, by the beautiful contradictions of faith, by the mystery of God's ways. You cried quietly in corners they never thought to check, weeping not just for your own pain, but for the spiritual blindness you witnessed everywhere you looked. The places where others felt safe, the crowded parties, the shallow conversations, the comfortable compromises, felt like cages to you. You'd sit in church services where everyone else seemed content with religious routine, while your spirit was crying out for authentic encounter with the living God. You'd attend family gatherings where everyone was satisfied with small talk about weather and sports, while your heart was breaking for real connection, for conversations that touched eternity. They called you too sensitive when you felt the weight of others' pain as if it were your own. They labeled you too intense when you couldn't pretend that surface-level living was enough. They whispered that you were too different when you refused to numb your spiritual awareness with the distractions that satisfied everyone else. But here's what they never understood, and what you're only now beginning to remember. You were never supposed to fit in. Listen to what Jesus told his disciples in John 15:19. If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. Out of the world, chosen one. Not from it, but out of it. You've spent decades trying to squeeze your eagle wings into chicken coops, wondering why you felt suffocated. You've exhausted yourself attempting to speak their language, wondering why your words fell on deaf ears. You've compromised your divine nature trying to fit into human systems, wondering why you always felt like you were dying inside. But what if I told you that every rejection was actually protection? What if every door that slammed in your face was heaven's way of saying, "Not that way, beloved. You're destined for something higher"? What if every relationship that couldn't handle your depth was God's way of preserving your anointing for those who could truly receive it? Think about it. Think about the prophet Elijah standing alone on Mount Carmel, facing 450 prophets of Baal. The entire nation had turned away from God, and there he stood, isolated, misunderstood, apparently outnumbered. But when fire fell from heaven and consumed his sacrifice, who was really alone? The 450 false prophets, or the one man who carried the presence of the Almighty? You've been Elijah your whole life, chosen one. Standing on mountains others were afraid to climb, seeing fires others couldn't perceive, hearing the voice of God while others heard only silence. And just like Elijah, you felt the crushing loneliness of being the only one in the room who could see what was really happening in the spiritual realm. Your childhood confusion wasn't a developmental disorder. It was spiritual awakening happening too early for anyone around you to understand. Your teenage years of feeling like an alien weren't rebellion. They were recognition that you truly were from somewhere else. Your adult struggles with conventional life weren't failure. They were your divine nature rejecting counterfeit purposes. Every time you tried to be normal, something inside you died. Every time you attempted to lower your standards to match the mediocrity around you, your spirit went into mourning. Every time you pretended to be satisfied with less than God's best, you felt like you were betraying your own soul. Because you were. The depression that has stalked you through the years wasn't mental illness. It was homesickness for a realm you've never seen with physical eyes, but have always known with spiritual ones. The anxiety that gripped you in social situations wasn't social disorder. It was your spirit recognizing that you were surrounded by people who couldn't comprehend the frequency you operated on. But today, right now, I'm here to tell you something that will change everything. Your difference isn't your defect. Your isolation isn't your punishment. Your spiritual sensitivity isn't your weakness. It's your superpower. You were never meant to fit in because you were meant to stand out. You were never meant to blend because you were meant to blaze. You were never meant to follow because you were meant to lead others out of the very wilderness you've been wandering in. Romans 8:19 says, "For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed." The world is waiting for you to stop hiding, chosen one. It's waiting for you to stop apologizing for who you are and start walking in the fullness of your divine identity. If you're hearing these words and feeling your spirit bear witness, if decades of confusion are suddenly making sense, If you're realizing that your greatest pain has been your greatest preparation, then comment or whisper this declaration over your life. I was never meant to fit in. I was meant to rise. Because the time for hiding is over. The season of shrinking back has ended. Your moment of emergence is here, and the world will never be the same once you fully step into who you were created to be. But first, you need to understand exactly what's flowing through your spiritual bloodstream. Now that you've acknowledged who you are, let me tell you something that will shatter every limitation you've ever accepted about yourself. What if I told you that your spirit was never born on this earth? What if I told you that the reason you've always felt different, the reason you've never quite fit in, the reason you carry burdens others can't understand, is because you're not entirely human? I know that sounds impossible. I know it challenges everything you've been taught. But stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal to you is hidden in plain sight throughout Scripture. Genesis 1:26 says, "Then God said, 'Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness.'" Did you catch that? In our image, not in the image of dirt, not in the image of flesh, in the image of the divine. You see, chosen one, when God breathed into Adam, He didn't just give him oxygen. He gave him His own essence, His own nature, His own DNA. You carry within you the genetic code of heaven itself. But here's what the church never taught you. Here's what they were afraid to tell you, because if you knew this truth, you'd never settle for their small boxes again. You are not a human being having a spiritual experience. You are a spiritual being having a human experience. Listen to what Jesus said in John 17:16. "They are not of this world, just as I am not of it." He wasn't speaking about Himself alone. He was speaking about you, about every chosen one who would ever walk this earth. You are not of this world. That homesickness you feel, that's your spirit remembering where you came from. That restlessness, that's your divine nature crying out for its true home. That sense that you're meant for something greater, that's because you are something greater. Your struggles aren't random. Your pain isn't purposeless. Your battles aren't meaningless. You're a warrior from another realm, stationed in enemy territory. You're royalty in exile. You're an ambassador from the kingdom of heaven, operating undercover in a fallen world. This is why darkness attacks you more than others. This is why the enemy works overtime to keep you confused, discouraged, and distracted. Because he knows what you are. He recognizes the light you carry. He sees the authority you possess. And he's terrified of what happens when you remember. In 1 Peter 2-9, God calls you a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, His own special people. Did you hear that? Chosen generation, royal priesthood, holy nation. You're not just another face in the crowd. You're divine royalty walking incognito. Your DNA doesn't just carry your grandmother's eyes or your father's stubborn streak. It carries the imprint of the Almighty. It carries frequencies from another dimension. It carries powers that this world cannot comprehend. You are spirit wearing skin, eternal breath wrapped in bone, a divine being on a temporary assignment. Every time you've felt misunderstood, that was confirmation. Every time doors closed in your face, that was redirection. Every time people rejected you, that was protection. Because you were never meant to blend in with a world that's passing away. You weren't made in a factory. You weren't assembled on some cosmic production line. You were whispered into being by the voice that spoke galaxies into existence. When God formed you, He said, "This one is special. This one carries my heart. This one will remember who they are and awaken others to their true identity." But here's the tragedy. Here's what breaks the heart of heaven. Most of God's chosen ones are walking around thinking they're ordinary. They're accepting limitations that were never meant for them. They're living beneath their spiritual inheritance because no one ever told them the truth about their origin. You've been lied to. You've been programmed to think small. You've been conditioned to accept defeat. You've been brainwashed into believing that struggle is your portion and mediocrity is your destiny. But I'm here to tell you tonight that every limitation you've accepted is a lie from the pit of hell. You are not just human, you are divine design. Your thoughts have the power to shift atmospheres. Your words carry creative force. Your prayers move the hand of God. Your presence changes the spiritual climate of every room you enter. This is why people either love you immediately or hate you for no reason. This is why children and animals are drawn to you. This is why you sense things others can't see. This is why you know things you were never taught. It's not intuition, it's not coincidence. It's your divine nature operating through your human vessel. So stop apologizing for being different. Stop trying to dim your light to make others comfortable. Stop hiding your gifts because people don't understand them. You were never meant to be understood by everyone. You were meant to be a mystery that points people back to the God who created you. Right now, I want you to say something out loud. I don't care who's listening. I don't care how crazy it sounds. Open your mouth and declare, I am not just human. I am divine design. Say it again, louder. Let heaven hear it. Let hell tremble at it. Let your own spirit awaken to it. Because, chosen one, once you fully grasp this truth, once you stop seeing yourself through human eyes and start seeing yourself through heaven's eyes, everything changes. Your identity shifts. Your confidence soars. Your authority activates. Your destiny unfolds. But here's what I need you to understand, and this is urgent. Now, I need to tell you something that's going to hit you like a lightning bolt. Something that will finally make sense of every rejection, every betrayal, every moment you felt like the world was against you. You want to know why your life has been so hard? Why you've faced resistance that others never seem to encounter? Why even your own family looks at you like you're speaking a foreign language? Why churches have rejected you? Why your own mind sometimes feels like a battlefield? Here's the truth that will shatter every lie you've believed about yourself. The enemy doesn't waste bullets on the ordinary. Think about that. When has Satan ever bothered with someone who posed no threat? When has darkness ever fought against another shadow? When has the kingdom of hell ever declared war on what's already defeated? Never. But you've been under attack since the day you drew breath, maybe even before. Listen to what Jesus said in John 15:18, -19. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belonged to the world, it would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you. Did you catch that? The world hates you because you don't belong here. The resistance you face isn't random. It's recognition. The spiritual realm recognizes what you carry before you even understand it yourself. You've been rejected by people who should have embraced you. You've been misunderstood by those who should have seen your heart. You've been attacked by institutions that should have protected you. You've felt alone in rooms full of people who claim to love God. Why? Because when light enters a room, it exposes everything that's been hiding in the darkness. And darkness doesn't go quietly. Your very presence threatens the status quo. Your questions challenge comfortable lies. Your standards expose mediocrity. Your spiritual hunger makes others uncomfortable with their spiritual complacency. This is why family members who used to be close suddenly become distant when you start walking in your calling. This is why church leaders who once celebrated you begin to feel threatened when your anointing starts to manifest. This is why friends who used to understand you suddenly act like you've become a stranger. They're not rejecting you. They're rejecting what you represent. They're rejecting the light that makes them uncomfortable with their own darkness. But here's where it gets deeper. The attacks haven't just come from outside, have they? Your own mind has been a battlefield. Thoughts of worthlessness, waves of depression that come out of nowhere. Anxiety that grips you in your most peaceful moments. Voices telling you that you're nothing special, that you're delusional, that you're wasting your time. That's not mental illness, chosen one. That's spiritual warfare. The enemy knows that if he can convince you that you're ordinary, if he can make you believe you're just another face in the crowd, then you'll never step into the authority that terrifies him. Ephesians 6:12 tells us exactly what we're fighting. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. The resistance you faced isn't because you're cursed, it's because you're covered. It's not because you're weak, it's because you're dangerous to the kingdom of darkness. Every rejection was redirection, every closed door was protection, every lonely season was preparation, every attack was actually evidence of your importance in God's plan. Think about David. Before he ever wore a crown, he was rejected by his own father, hunted by the king he served, betrayed by people he trusted. But every arrow aimed at him only confirmed that he carried something that threatened the existing order. Think about Joseph. Sold into slavery by his own brothers, falsely accused, forgotten in prison. But every attack was actually positioning him for promotion. Think about Daniel, thrown into a lion's den because his very existence threatened the political system. But the lions couldn't touch him because heaven had marked him as untouchable. The loneliness you've endured, it was protecting you from connections that would have compromised your calling. The rejection you've experienced, it was steering you away from places that would have dimmed your light. The battles in your mind, they were evidence that you carry something worth fighting for. You want to know why the world fights you so hard? Because you're not from here. You're a citizen of another kingdom operating behind enemy lines. You're a threat to everything that's false, everything that's temporary, everything that's built on lies. The enemy has spent years trying to convince you that you're the problem, that you're too sensitive, too intense, too much, too different. But what if those very things that make you too much for this world are exactly what make you perfect for your assignment? What if your sensitivity is actually spiritual discernment? What if your intensity is actually holy fire? What if being too much for this world means you're just the right size for God's purposes? The warfare against you has been intense because your destiny is intense. The resistance has been fierce because your calling is fierce. The attacks have been relentless because your assignment threatens the very foundations of darkness. So I want you to pause right here. I want you to whisper these words over your life, over your story, over every battle scar you carry. Now I understand. I was never cursed. I was covered. Say it again. Let it sink into every place where you've questioned your worth. Let it heal every wound where you've wondered why your life has been so hard. Because, chosen one, everything that tried to destroy you was actually confirming your identity. Every giant you faced was evidence that you carry the spirit of a giant killer. Every lion's den was proof that you walk with the same God who shuts the mouths of lions. But here's what's about to change everything. You know what breaks my heart? It's watching God's chosen ones walk through life believing they're ordinary, believing they're just another face in the crowd, believing the lie that their struggles, their sensitivity, their deep hunger for something more is just normal human experience. But you're not normal. You never were. Let me take you back, way back, before you took your first breath on this earth, before your mother felt your first kick, before your father dreamed of your name. There was a moment in eternity when the creator of the universe looked through time and space and said something that changed everything. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Jeremiah 1-5. He knew you, not just about you. He knew you, your personality, your struggles, your dreams, your destiny, your heartbreak, your victories. He saw it all, and he marked you as his own. But here's what's going to shake you to your core. That marking, it wasn't invisible. It left traces, evidence, signs that you've been carrying your entire life without even realizing it. When you were 5 years old, sitting in Sunday school, while other kids were fidgeting and daydreaming about cartoons, you were asking questions that made the teacher uncomfortable. Why did God let bad things happen to Job? If Jesus loves everyone, why are people mean? Where was I before I was born? Your parents thought you were just a curious child. But that wasn't curiosity, that was recognition. Your spirit recognizing truths that your young mind couldn't articulate yet. When you were a teenager, while your classmates were obsessed with popularity and fitting in, you felt this crushing weight. Not depression, not anxiety. This burden for people who were hurting. You'd see the lonely kid eating lunch alone, and your chest would tighten. You'd watch the news and feel physically sick at the injustice. Your friends called you too sensitive. Your family said you cared too much. But that wasn't oversensitivity. That was your divine DNA, responding to a world that had fallen so far from God's original design that it was breaking your spirit to witness it. When you hit your 20s, maybe your 30s, and everyone around you seemed to have life figured out, climbing corporate ladders, buying houses, starting families, checking off society's boxes, you felt lost, restless. Like you were sleepwalking through someone else's life. People told you to grow up, to be realistic, to stop chasing fantasies. But that restlessness wasn't immaturity. That was your calling knocking on the door of your consciousness, begging you to remember who you really are. And now, as you've gotten older, as life has stripped away your illusions one by one, as you've buried dreams and buried people you loved, as you've watched the world grow darker and more chaotic, you've felt it again. That pull, that knowing, that voice in the deepest part of your soul whispering, there's more. You were made for more. This isn't all there is. Do you know what that voice is? It's the Spirit of God testifying with your spirit that you are a child of God. Romans 8:16, not just a creation, not just a believer, a child, with all the rights, authority, and inheritance that comes with that bloodline. But here's where it gets dangerous. Here's where the enemy has been working overtime to keep you confused, distracted, and defeated. Because if you ever fully grasp what I'm about to tell you, if you ever truly understand the magnitude of your identity, you will become unstoppable. You weren't just chosen, you were marked. There's a difference. Chosen means selected, marked means branded, sealed, claimed, protected, destined for a specific purpose that cannot be derailed, delayed, or destroyed. You're like Moses holding a staff you haven't picked up yet. For 40 years, Moses thought he was just a shepherd, just a man with a stutter who killed an Egyptian and ran away. He had no idea he was carrying the power to split seas, to bring plagues upon empires, to lead millions out of bondage. The staff was always there, the power was always there, the calling was always there. But until he picked up that staff and said yes to God's voice, he remained a shepherd in the wilderness. What's your staff? What's the thing God has placed in your hands that you've been treating as ordinary when it's actually extraordinary? You're like David wearing a crown no one can see. For years, David was just the youngest son, forgotten by his own father when the prophet came calling. Just a kid who sang to sheep and fought off wild animals. But God had already anointed him king. The crown was invisible, but it was real. And every giant he faced, every cave he hid in, every betrayal he endured was preparing him for the throne that was already his. What's your invisible crown? What authority has God given you that you've been afraid to claim because the world can't see it yet? The marking on your life isn't just about your destiny, it's about your protection. Do you know why you've survived everything you've been through? Do you know why you're still here when others didn't make it? Do you know why every weapon formed against you has failed, even when it looked like you were finished? Because the mark of God on your life is stronger than any curse, any attack, any scheme of the enemy. But here's the question that's going to haunt you if you don't answer it. How much longer are you going to live beneath your marking? How much longer are you going to accept ordinary when you were designed for extraordinary? How much longer are you going to let the world convince you that you're just human when you carry the very DNA of divinity? Because time is running out, the hour is late. The world is groaning under the weight of its own rebellion, and God is looking for his marked ones to rise up and take their place. The question is, are you ready to stop hiding and start shining? Listen to me, chosen one. For too long, you've been walking around like a lion who's forgotten how to roar. For too long, you've been living beneath your calling, accepting scraps when you were born for the feast. For too long, you've been apologizing for the fire that burns within you, instead of letting it consume everything that's not of God. But today that changes. You see, the enemy has been working overtime to keep you small. He's been whispering lies in your ear since you were a child, telling you to tone it down, blend in, don't make waves. He's been using broken people to break your spirit, using closed doors to convince you that you're not worthy of the open ones. But here's what the devil doesn't want you to know. Every attack against you has been confirmation of your assignment. Every rejection has been redirection toward your destiny. Every night you've cried yourself to sleep, wondering if God forgot about you. He was right there, collecting every tear in his bottle, preparing to turn your mourning into dancing. The reason your life has felt like a battlefield is because you are a warrior. The reason people misunderstand you is because you speak a heavenly language in an earthly realm. The reason you've never fit in is because you were never meant to fit in. You were meant to stand out. You were meant to disrupt. You were meant to walk in power. But here's the problem, dear one. You've been trying to access heavenly power with earthly methods. You've been trying to activate divine authority while still seeking human approval. You've been attempting to walk in supernatural dominion while your spirit remains unguarded, your words remain powerless, and your faith remains theoretical. That ends today. God is calling you up from the valley of dry bones. He's calling you out of the tomb of mediocrity. He's calling you into the fullness of who you were created to be. But this requires action. This requires activation. This requires you to stop being a passive observer of your own destiny and become an active participant in God's plan. Are you ready? Because I'm about to give you 5 keys that will unlock the supernatural power that's been lying dormant within you. These aren't suggestions, these are divine instructions. These are the difference between existing and truly living. First, guard your spirit like your life depends on it. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." Your spirit is the control center of your entire existence. What you allow in determines what flows out. Stop giving the enemy access to your thoughts through toxic entertainment, negative relationships, and worldly philosophies. Start protecting what God has placed inside you. Build walls around your spirit. Post guards at the gates of your mind. Because if you don't guard what's sacred, the world will steal it, kill it, and destroy it. Second, speak with authority, not apology. Proverbs 18:21 declares, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue." Your words are not just sounds in the air. They are creative forces. They are spiritual weapons. They are prophetic declarations that shape your reality. Stop speaking doubt. Stop speaking fear. Stop speaking defeat. Start speaking defeat. Start speaking life. Start speaking victory. Start speaking the promises of God over your situation. When you speak with divine authority, heaven moves. When you declare God's word with faith, angels are dispatched. Your tongue is a weapon of mass construction. Use it. Third, walk by faith, not by sight. 2 Corinthians 5-7 says, "We live by faith, not by sight." The natural realm is temporary. The spiritual realm is eternal. Stop making decisions based on what you see. Start making moves based on what God has said. Faith isn't believing God can do it. Faith is believing God will do it. Faith isn't hoping for the best. Faith is knowing the outcome before the battle begins. When you walk by faith, you're not walking alone. You're walking in partnership with the God who created the universe with his words. Fourth, stay connected to the source. John 15:5 reminds us, "Apart from me, you can do nothing." You are not a self-made person. You are not a self-sustained person. You are a God-made, God-sustained, God-empowered person. Every breath is a gift. Every heartbeat is a miracle. Every victory is His doing through you. Stop trying to do life in your own strength. Plug into the source. Stay in His presence. Abide in His word. Because when you remain connected to Him, His power flows through you like electricity through a wire. Fifth, stop trying to fit in. You were not created to blend in with the crowd. You were created to stand out for the kingdom. You were not called to be comfortable. You were called to be extraordinary. Stop seeking approval from people who don't understand your assignment. Stop dimming your light so others feel comfortable in their darkness. Stop shrinking so others don't feel intimidated. God didn't give you gifts to hide them. He gave you gifts to use them. Boldly, unapologetically, powerfully. Now listen to me carefully, because I'm about to speak something over your life that will shatter every lie the enemy has whispered in your ear. You are not weak. You are a lion in disguise who's forgotten how to roar. You are not forgotten. You are a general in God's army who's been AWOL too long. You are not a mistake. You are a masterpiece wrapped in human flesh. You are not ordinary. You are extraordinary, with a divine assignment that hell cannot stop and earth cannot understand. The time for playing small is over. The season of doubt is finished. The era of apologizing for who God made you to be has ended. Right now, wherever you are, I want you to stand up. If you're at home, stand up. If you're in your car, pull over and stand up. If you're lying in bed, sit up. Because what you're about to declare is going to shift the atmosphere around you. Raise your hand to heaven, open your mouth, and declare with me. I activate my calling. I step into my true identity. I am not 100% human. I am divine DNA wrapped in flesh. I am chosen. I am set apart. I am anointed for such a time as this. Devil, you have no authority over my life. Fear, you have no place in my future. Doubt, you are evicted from my mind. I walk in power. I speak with authority. I live by faith. And from this day forward, I will never be the same again. Now the question remains, what will you do with this activation? Chosen one, I need you to understand something that will shake you to your core. The struggles you've faced, the battles you've endured, the rejection you've experienced. None of it was random. None of it was punishment. It was preparation. You see, darkness doesn't attack what doesn't threaten it. The enemy doesn't waste ammunition on insignificant targets. If your life has been under constant assault, if you've faced opposition that seems disproportionate to who you think you are, there's a reason. You are dangerous to darkness. Let me paint you a picture that will change everything. Joseph was just a shepherd boy with dreams that seemed too big for his small world. His own brothers threw him into a pit, sold him into slavery, and left him to die. For 13 years, he sat in dungeons, forgotten by those he'd helped, abandoned by those who promised to remember him. But here's what Joseph didn't know while he was rotting in that Egyptian prison. Every betrayal was positioning him. Every injustice was preparing him. Every tear he shed in that cell was watering the ground of his destiny. Because God wasn't just preserving Joseph's life, He was preparing Joseph to preserve an entire nation. Joseph wasn't ordinary. He just didn't know it yet. Esther was an orphan Jewish girl in a foreign land, hidden among her people like a diamond in the rough. She had no political power, no royal bloodline, no earthly reason to believe she could change the trajectory of history. But when the moment came, when her people faced extinction, something awakened inside her. She realized she wasn't there by accident. She wasn't chosen by chance. And when she stepped into that throne room, uninvited and risking her very life, she spoke 7 words that still echo through eternity. If I perish, I perish. Esther wasn't ordinary. She just didn't know it yet. Daniel was captured as a teenager, torn from everything familiar, forced to serve in a pagan empire that wanted to erase his identity. They changed his name, changed his diet, changed his environment. but they couldn't change what God had placed inside him. And when the king's wise men failed, when the astrologers came up empty, when the magicians had no answers, Daniel stood up. Not because he was braver than others, not because he was smarter than others, but because he remembered who he was. And when they threw him into that lion's den, when death surrounded him on every side, something supernatural happened. The lions that should have devoured him became his bodyguards. The pit that was meant to be his grave became his pulpit. Daniel wasn't ordinary. He just didn't know it yet. Do you see the pattern? Every one of these biblical heroes thought they were just regular people caught in extraordinary circumstances. They felt overwhelmed, outmatched, unprepared. They questioned God's timing, wrestled with their calling, doubted their ability to make a difference. Sound familiar? But here's the revelation that will split your spirit wide open. What if your whole life has been training for what's coming next week? What if every closed door was God preparing you for the right door? What if every betrayal was heaven positioning you for the right relationships? What if every season of hiddenness was divine preparation for your season of manifestation? What if you're about to enter your own palace? The enemy has worked overtime to convince you that you're just another face in the crowd. He's whispered lies that you're too old, too damaged, too late, too insignificant. He's pointed to your failures and said, "See, you're nothing special." But chosen one, let me tell you what makes darkness tremble. The moment you realize you're not fighting for victory, you're fighting from victory. The moment you understand you're not trying to become something, you already are something. The moment you stop begging God to use you and start walking in the authority He's already given you. This is why your prayers have been so intense. This is why your worship has been so desperate. This is why you've felt such urgency in your spirit lately. Something is shifting in the heavenlies. Ancient doors are creaking open. Supernatural acceleration is building momentum. Heaven is about to release what it's been holding back. You think you've been waiting on God, but God has been waiting on you. Waiting for you to stop seeing yourself through the eyes of your past and start seeing yourself through the lens of prophecy. Waiting for you to stop measuring yourself by your mistakes and start measuring yourself by your mandate. The same God who turned Joseph's prison into a pathway to the palace. The same God who turned Esther's fear into fearless intervention. The same God who turned Daniel's lion's den into a demonstration of divine power. That same God is about to turn your trials into triumph. But you have to stop running from who you are. You have to stop apologizing for the fire that burns inside you. You have to stop dimming your light because others are comfortable in darkness. The world doesn't need another ordinary person trying to fit in. The world needs you to remember who you are and step into what you carry. And now, we come to the part heaven's been waiting for. The moment when everything you've learned, everything you've endured, everything you've been prepared for collides with your destiny. Are you ready to stop being ordinary? You didn't just grow up. You survived programming. Let me tell you something they never wanted you to know. From the moment you took your first breath, there has been a war raging over your identity. Not a war with guns and bombs, but something far more sinister. A war for your memory. A war for your spiritual DNA. A war to convince you that the fire burning inside you was just imagination. They didn't come for your body, chosen one. They came for your memory. Do you remember being a child, lying in bed at night, feeling like you could reach out and touch eternity? Do you remember knowing things you were never taught? Do you remember the dreams that felt more real than reality itself? Do you remember that unshakable knowing that you were meant for something extraordinary? What happened to that child? The enemy knew something about you that you're only now beginning to remember. He knew that if you ever fully awakened to who you are, his kingdom would tremble. So he deployed the most sophisticated weapon ever created against the chosen ones: systematic spiritual amnesia. They trained you to be small. They medicated your intuition. They punished your spiritual sensitivity. Listen carefully. When you were young and you told the adults around you about the dreams, the visions, the knowing that came from somewhere beyond this world, what did they say? Stop being so dramatic. Use your imagination for something useful. That's not real. You need to focus on what matters. They didn't know they were participating in your spiritual lobotomy. The education system taught you to memorize, but never to discern. The medical system gave you pills for the very sensitivity that was proof of your divine nature. The religious system gave you rules, but stole your relationship. The media fed you lies about what success looks like, what happiness feels like, what normal should be. And slowly, gradually, methodically, they convinced you that the lion inside you was just a house cat. But here's what they couldn't erase. Here's what no system, no medication, no programming could touch. Deep in your spirit, beyond the reach of human manipulation, God placed something unbreakable. A divine memory, a spiritual DNA that would survive every attempt to destroy it. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart, declares the Lord in Jeremiah 1-5. You were set apart before you were even conceived. That means your calling predates your programming. Your purpose is older than their lies. Your identity was established in heaven before hell ever got a chance to whisper in your ear. Think about this. Why do you think the enemy worked so hard to make you forget? Why the elaborate system of deception? Why the constant bombardment of messages telling you to fit in, settle down, stop dreaming, be realistic? Because you are not realistic. You are supernatural. The very fact that they had to work this hard to suppress you is proof of how powerful you actually are. You don't put a muzzle on a mouse. You don't build a cage for a goldfish. You only contain what you fear might break free and change everything. For decades, you've been living like a lion raised in a zoo, told you're just a house cat, pacing behind bars that exist only in your mind, fed just enough to survive but never enough to thrive, watched by crowds who marvel at you but never see your true nature. But what happens when a lion remembers it was born to rule? The book of Romans tells us, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Romans 12:2. The word conform in the original Greek means to be pressed into a mold. That's exactly what they tried to do to you. They tried to press your infinite spirit into their finite boxes. But transformation comes through remembering. And chosen one, it's time to remember. You were never meant to spend your life asking permission to be yourself. You were never meant to dim your light so others could feel comfortable in their darkness. You were never meant to apologize for the fire that burns inside you. That restlessness you feel, that's not discontent. That's your spirit recognizing its imprisonment and demanding freedom. That sense that time is running out, that's not anxiety. That's divine urgency calling you back to your true assignment. That feeling that you're capable of so much more, that's not pride. That's remembrance. The enemy's greatest victory was convincing you that your greatest strengths were actually weaknesses. Your sensitivity, he called it emotional instability. Your discernment, he labeled it judgment. Your passion for truth, he branded it extremism. Your refusal to settle, he diagnosed it as mental illness. But what if I told you that everything they told you was wrong about yourself is actually proof that you're right on target? Every attempt to medicate your intuition was because your intuition was accurate. Every effort to silence your questions was because your questions threatened their control. Every time they told you to be more realistic was because your reality was bigger than their imagination. You've been living in spiritual exile, chosen one, banished from your true identity, cut off from your divine inheritance, made to feel like a stranger in your own life. But exile was never meant to be permanent. Exile was preparation. Joseph was exiled to Egypt before he ruled it. Moses was exiled to the wilderness before he delivered a nation. David was exiled to caves before he sat on a throne. Esther was exiled to a foreign palace before she saved her people. Your exile is almost over. Your season of remembering has begun. But the question that will determine everything is this. Now that you're beginning to remember who you are, what are you going to do about it? You know what's truly heartbreaking? Right now, somewhere in America, there's a 70-year-old grandmother sitting in her living room, staring at the television, feeling more alone than she's ever felt in her entire life. She's surrounded by everything the world told her would make her happy: the house, the family photos, the retirement savings. Yet something inside her is screaming that this can't be all there is. That grandmother is you. That restlessness is your spirit, recognizing a devastating truth. This world was never built for people like you. Listen carefully. Chosen one. The system you've been living in for decades wasn't designed to nurture your divine nature. It was engineered to suppress it. Every institution you've trusted, every authority you've respected, every cultural norm you've followed has been working overtime to convince you that you're nothing more than flesh and blood waiting to return to dust. But what if I told you that's the greatest lie ever sold? The matrix of fear surrounds you from the moment you take your first breath. Think about it. From childhood, what were you taught? Stay in line. Don't ask too many questions. Work hard, pay your taxes, retire quietly, and don't make waves. The educational system taught you to memorize, not to think. The religious system taught you to follow, not to seek. The economic system taught you to consume, not to create. Why? Because the moment you start thinking for yourself, questioning the narrative, seeking God directly instead of through intermediaries, you become dangerous to the powers that control this world. Jesus himself warned us about this. In John 15:19, he said, "If you were of the world, it would love you as its own. But because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you." Do you hear that? The world hates you because you don't belong to it. That rejection you felt your entire life. That sense of being an outsider even in your own family. That's not a character flaw. That's confirmation of your divine origin. The seduction of comfort is perhaps the most insidious trap of all. The system doesn't want to torture you into submission. That's too obvious. Instead, it wants to lull you into spiritual sleep with just enough comfort to keep you quiet. Give them a steady paycheck, a nice house, some entertainment, maybe a little bit of religion on Sundays, and they'll never question why their souls feel empty. How many of you spent 40, 50, 60 years climbing ladders that were leaning against the wrong walls? How many of you achieved everything the world said would make you happy, only to discover that success felt like spiritual death? The system gave you comfort, but it stole your calling. It gave you security, but it suffocated your spirit. It gave you a retirement plan, but it robbed you of your divine purpose. And here's what really breaks my heart. Most people die without ever realizing they were living someone else's dream. The religion of conformity has become the unofficial state religion of America. Conform to societal expectations, conform to family traditions, conform to political ideologies, conform to age-appropriate behavior. The message is always the same: don't be different, don't stand out, don't rock the boat. But chosen one, conformity is spiritual suicide. When you conform to a world system that's hostile to your divine nature, you're not finding peace, you're burying your calling alive. Look around you. Notice how the system rewards compliance and punishes authenticity. Notice how it celebrates mediocrity and suppresses excellence. Notice how it promotes spiritual blindness and marginalizes divine revelation. The system doesn't fear your success, it fears your awakening. Because the moment you wake up to who you really are, the moment you remember your divine origin, the moment you stop asking permission to be great, you become ungovernable, you become unpredictable, you become unstoppable, and that terrifies them. Think about every great move of God in history. Moses didn't organize a committee before confronting Pharaoh. David didn't take a poll before facing Goliath. Jesus didn't seek government approval before healing the sick and raising the dead. They operated outside the system because they answered to a higher authority. The system wants you to believe that your best days are behind you. At your age, you should be winding down, accepting limitations, preparing to fade quietly into the background. But what if the system is lying? What if your divine assignment is just beginning? What if everything you've experienced up until now was just preparation for your real purpose? Here's the truth that will shatter every limitation the world has placed on you. You were not sent here to survive the system. You were born to break it. Not through violence or rebellion, but through something far more powerful, divine authenticity. When you start living as the supernatural being you truly are, when you stop conforming to worldly expectations and start conforming to heavenly realities, you become a walking, breathing declaration that there's another way to live. The system counts on your compliance. It depends on your silence. It survives on your spiritual sleepiness. But what happens when the sleeping giant awakens? What happens when you stop playing by rules that were designed to keep you small? What happens when you remember that you carry the DNA of the Creator himself? Everything changes. The question isn't whether you have what it takes to break free from the system. The question is whether you're finally ready to stop betraying your divine nature just to fit into a world that was never meant to contain you. Because, chosen one, if you don't break free now, if you don't remember who you really are, you'll spend whatever time you have left wondering what might have been. And that's a tragedy no retirement plan can fix. So tell me, are you ready to stop surviving in a system that hates your divine nature and start thriving in the supernatural reality you were born to inhabit? But here's where most people get it wrong, chosen one. They think freedom is a location. They think deliverance is a destination. They think once you walk out of Egypt, Egypt walks out of you. But that's not how spiritual warfare works. Let me tell you something that will shake you to your core. Pharaoh isn't just a man. Pharaoh is a mindset. Egypt isn't just a place. Egypt is a prison of the mind. And the most dangerous slaves are the ones who've been set free, but still think like prisoners. You see this played out in one of the most heartbreaking stories in Scripture. God performs the impossible for the Israelites. 10 plagues, the Red Sea splits in half, Pharaoh's army swallowed by the waters. They're dancing on the shore, singing songs of victory, celebrating their deliverance. But 3 days later, 3 days, they're complaining about bitter water. A few weeks later, they're crying for the food they had in Egypt. We remember the fish we ate in Egypt at no cost, also the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions and garlic. Numbers 11-5. Wait a minute. At no cost? They forgot the whips, they forgot the brutality, they forgot the bondage, they forgot their babies being thrown into the Nile River. They romanticized their oppression because the wilderness felt uncertain. And here's the gut punch. It wasn't just one person. It wasn't just the weak ones. It was an entire generation. An entire generation that saw miracles with their own eyes, yet died in the desert because they couldn't let Egypt die in them. Have you been set free, but still think like a prisoner? Listen to me carefully. Some of you watching this right now have been delivered from addiction, but you still think like an addict. You've been healed from depression, but you still speak like a victim. You've been called out of poverty, but you still make decisions from a scarcity mindset. You escaped Egypt, but Egypt didn't escape you. This is why the children of Israel wandered for 40 years in a wilderness that should have been an 11-day journey. Deuteronomy 1-2 tells us it was only 11 days from Mount Horeb to Kadesh Barnea. 11 days, but they turned it into 4 decades of circling, complaining and dying. Because geography doesn't change your heart. Location doesn't transform your mind. You can be physically free but spiritually enslaved. You can be out of the system but still operating by its rules. And here's what breaks God's heart. He didn't deliver you from Egypt just so you could spend the rest of your life talking about Egypt. He didn't break your chains just so you could carry them around as jewelry. He didn't set you free just so you could build monuments to your past bondage. But that's exactly what most people do. They get delivered on Sunday and go back to slave thinking on Monday. They receive a prophetic word about their destiny and then spend the next month explaining why it can't happen. They witness God's power in their lives and then retreat to familiar forms of bondage because freedom feels too risky. You know what the most tragic verse in the Bible is? But my people would not listen to me. Israel would not submit to me. So I gave them over to their stubborn hearts to follow their own devices. Psalm 81:11, -12. God gave them over, not to their enemies, not to circumstances, to their own stubborn hearts. Here's the question that will determine your destiny. What Egyptian mindset are you still carrying? What slave mentality are you still entertaining? What prison thoughts are you still thinking, even though the cell door has been unlocked? Because I need you to understand something. The enemy doesn't want you back in Egypt. That's not his strategy anymore. His strategy is much more sophisticated. He wants you to stay in the wilderness. He wants you to live between deliverance and destiny. He wants you free enough to not go backward, but enslaved enough to never go forward. He wants you to spend 40 years talking about the promise instead of walking in it. Some of you have been in the wilderness so long you've forgotten there's a promised land. You've gotten comfortable with manna when God has milk and honey waiting. You've settled for survival when He's prepared abundance. And the most heartbreaking part, the very thing you're afraid to lose is the very thing that's keeping you from everything God wants to give you. The Israelites were afraid to let go of Egypt because Egypt was familiar. Egypt was predictable. Egypt was safe. Even slavery feels secure when it's all you've known. But chosen one, you weren't delivered to be safe. You were delivered to be significant. You weren't set free to be comfortable. You were set free to be commissioned. So I'm asking you right now, in this sacred moment, to make a declaration that will shift the atmosphere around your life. Don't just think it. Don't just feel it. Say it. Write it. Declare it with the authority that comes from knowing who you are. If you're ready to stop wandering in circles, if you're ready to stop romanticizing your past bondage, if you're ready to let Egypt die in you so the promise can live through you, write these words. I'm not going back to Egypt, because the wilderness season is ending. The promised land is calling. And this time, you're not just leaving a place. You're leaving a mentality. You're not just escaping a system. You're embracing a new identity. But first, Egypt has to die in you. And that death, that's where your real resurrection begins. You know what the most painful part of being chosen is? It's not the battles. It's not the rejection. It's not even the loneliness. It's the waiting. You've been waiting for decades, haven't you? Waiting for your breakthrough. Waiting for your vindication. Waiting for God to finally show up and prove that all those years of believing, all those nights of crying out, all those moments when you felt like you were going crazy, that it all meant something. And the longer you wait, the louder that voice gets. The one that whispers, maybe you imagined it all. Maybe you're not chosen. Maybe God forgot about you. Listen to me, chosen one. That voice is lying. Your delay is not your denial. Your wilderness is not your wasteland. Your waiting is not your worthlessness. Let me tell you what's really been happening all these years while you thought God was silent. While you thought He had moved on to someone else. While you thought your promise had expired. He's been conditioning you. You see, there's a difference between being called and being prepared. There's a difference between having a destiny and being ready to walk in it and God. God loves you too much to give you something you're not ready to handle. Look at Moses. 40 years in Pharaoh's palace, thinking he was ready to deliver Israel. But when he tried to do it in his own strength, in his own timing, what happened? He killed a man and had to flee for his life. Then came the real preparation. 40 years in the wilderness. 40 years of silence. 40 years of tending sheep when he thought he was called to lead people. But here's what Moses didn't understand during those brutal decades of delay. God wasn't just preparing a deliverer, He was breaking down a prince. He was stripping away the arrogance, the entitlement, the need to be noticed and applauded. Because you can't deliver slaves when you still think like royalty. Deuteronomy 8:2 says, "Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years, to humble and test you in order to know what was in your heart." What was in your heart, chosen one? Bitterness from all the times you were overlooked, fear from all the doors that slammed in your face, self-hatred from all the ways you felt like you didn't measure up. God saw it, and He loved you too much to promote you with poison still in your system. That's why the wilderness felt so brutal. It wasn't designed to kill you. It was designed to kill what couldn't come with you. The insecurity that would have sabotaged your influence, the pride that would have corrupted your power, the unforgiveness that would have poisoned your purpose. Every year of delay was a year of detox. Every season of silence was a season of surgery. Every moment you felt forgotten was a moment God was performing reconstructive work on your soul. Because here's what I've learned after decades of watching God's chosen ones. The greater the calling, the greater the conditioning. The higher the assignment, the deeper the preparation. The more powerful the promise, the more painful the process. David was anointed king as a teenager, but he didn't touch the throne for 15 years. 15 years of running from Saul, 15 years of hiding in caves, 15 years of wondering if Samuel had made a mistake. But those weren't wasted years. Those were warrior years. Those were the years that transformed a shepherd boy into a giant killer. Those were the years that turned a musician into a mighty man of war. Joseph had dreams of greatness at 17, but he didn't see the palace until he was 30. 13 years of slavery, 13 years of false accusations, 13 years of being forgotten in prison. But when Pharaoh finally called for him, Joseph didn't just have a gift of interpretation. He had the wisdom to save a nation. He had the character to forgive his betrayers. He had the maturity to handle power without being corrupted by it. What if I told you that every year you've been waiting has been working for you, not against you? What if every delay has been divine strategy, not divine forgetfulness? What if every closed door has been God's way of making room for something bigger than you ever imagined? Maybe what you called abandonment was actually appointment. Maybe what you called rejection was actually protection. Maybe what you called delay was actually divine design. You think you're behind schedule? You're not behind anything. You're right on time for God's perfect plan. You think you've lost too many years? You haven't lost anything. You've been invested in. Every tear has been an investment. Every trial has been training. Every test has been preparation for testimony. And now you're almost ready. I can feel it in the spirit. The season is shifting. The wilderness years are ending. The preparation is nearly complete. The conditioning is almost finished. But before God releases you into your promise, He needs to know, have you learned to trust His timing even when you don't understand it? Have you learned to walk in faith even when you can't see the path? Have you learned to love Him for who He is, not just for what He can give you? Because the assignment that's coming, it's going to require a level of trust you've never had to walk in before, a level of faith that defies human logic, a level of love that can only come from someone who has been through the fire and came out refined. The delay wasn't punishment, chosen one. It was preparation, and the preparation is almost over. But here's the question that will determine everything that happens next. Will you step into what God has prepared for you, or will you stay bitter about how long it took to get here? You know what breaks my heart? It's the phone calls I get, the emails that flood my inbox. Chosen ones writing to me, tears streaming down their faces, saying the same thing over and over. Pastor, I feel like I'm walking in circles. I feel like God has forgotten me. I feel like I'm stuck in some endless loop of disappointment and delay. Dear one, let me stop you right there. God didn't forget you. He was building your Jericho strategy. You think you've been wandering aimlessly for the past 5 years, 10 years, maybe even 20 years of your life. You think those detours were mistakes. You think those closed doors were rejections. You think those seasons of waiting were punishments. But what if I told you that every single step you took in what felt like the wrong direction was actually strategic positioning? What if every circle you walked wasn't confusion, but preparation? What if God has been training you, positioning you, preparing you for the walls that are about to fall? Listen to me carefully. In Joshua chapter 6, God gave the Israelites the strangest military strategy in human history. He didn't tell them to charge the walls. He didn't tell them to build siege engines. He didn't tell them to negotiate with the enemy. He told them to walk in circles. For 6 days they marched around the massive walls of Jericho. One lap, every day. The same route, the same stones under their feet, the same mocking voices from the walls above. The same questions probably running through their minds. Are we crazy? Are we wasting our time? Does God even know what He's doing? But here's what they didn't understand. What feels like wasted motion is often divine momentum. Every step they took was loosening the foundation. Every lap they walked was building spiritual pressure. Every day they followed God's seemingly senseless instructions. They were actually participating in the most sophisticated warfare strategy heaven had ever deployed. You've been walking in circles, but your shout is coming. Do you hear me? You haven't been stuck. You've been circling. You haven't been forgotten. You've been positioned. You haven't been walking aimlessly. You've been walking with purpose, even when the purpose was hidden from your eyes. That job you lost 3 years ago that devastated you, that was lap number 1 around your Jericho. That relationship that ended and left you questioning everything, that was lap number 2. That financial crisis that nearly broke you, lap number 3. That health scare that brought you to your knees, lap number 4. That season of loneliness when you felt like God had abandoned you, lap number 5. That recent disappointment that made you want to give up, lap number 6. And now you're sitting here, exhausted, wondering if you can take another step, wondering if you have the strength to keep believing, wondering if this circular pattern will ever end. But chosen one, can I tell you something that's going to change your entire perspective on your life? You're not on lap 7 yet. You're on the edge of lap 7. And on the 7th day, in Joshua 6:15-16, something shifted. The instructions changed. On the 7th day they rose early, at the dawn of day, and marched around the city in the same manner 7 times. And at the 7th time, when the priests had blown the trumpets, Joshua said to the people, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city." 7 times on the 7th day. Not 1 lap. 7 laps. And then, the shout that shook the earth. What happened next defied every law of physics, every military manual, every human understanding. So the people shouted, and the trumpets were blown. As soon as the people heard the sound of the trumpet, the people shouted a great shout, and the wall fell down flat. The walls didn't crack. They didn't crumble slowly. They fell down flat, completely, instantly, supernaturally. And I'm here to tell you that your walls are about to do the same thing. That financial barrier that's been standing in your way for years, it's about to fall flat. That health mountain that the doctors said would never move, it's about to fall flat. That generational curse that's been plaguing your family for decades, it's about to fall flat. That spiritual attack that's been wearing you down, making you question your calling, it's about to fall flat. But here's the part that most people miss. Here's the part that will determine whether you walk into your victory or miss it entirely. Don't stop on day 6. I've seen too many chosen ones quit on day 6. I've watched too many people give up when they were 24 hours away from their breakthrough. I've witnessed too many saints throw in the towel when they were 1 lap away from their walls falling down. The enemy knows your pattern. He knows when you're getting close to day 7. And that's when he increases the pressure. That's when he whispers the loudest lies. That's when he makes the circumstances look the most impossible. He'll tell you it's not working. He'll tell you God's plan has failed. He'll tell you to try a different strategy, take a different path, trust a different voice. But day 7 is coming. Can you feel it? Can you sense the shift in the atmosphere? Can you feel the walls beginning to vibrate with the footsteps of your faith? Your shout is building in your throat. Your victory is assembling in the heavenlies. Your breakthrough is positioning itself to manifest in your reality. But the question that will determine your destiny is this: will you take that 7th lap? Will you march around your impossible situation one more time when everything in you wants to quit? Will you shout when your voice is tired, when your faith feels weak, when the walls still look as intimidating as they did on day 1? Because I'm telling you right now, chosen one, the walls aren't falling because of your strength, they're falling because of your obedience. As we come to the end of this sacred journey together, I need you to remember 3 unshakable truths that will anchor your soul in the storms ahead. First, you are not 100% human. You carry within you the divine DNA of your Creator. That restlessness, that sense of not belonging, that burning in your chest when you see injustice, that's not a flaw. That's your divine nature crying out, reminding you that this world is not your home. You are spirit wrapped in flesh, eternity dwelling in time, heaven walking on earth. Second, your circles are not confusion, they're divine strategy. Every lap you've walked around your Jericho, every season that felt like wilderness wandering, every closed door that left you questioning God's plan, it was all preparation. You haven't been stuck. You've been positioned. Your walls are about to fall, and when they do, the victory will be so complete, so supernatural, that everyone will know it was God. Third, your shout is coming. Day 7 is approaching faster than you realize. Don't you dare quit on day 6. Don't you dare give up when you're 1 lap away from your breakthrough. The enemy is fighting you so hard because he knows what's about to be released in your life. But I want you to know something else, dear one. You are not walking this path alone. Right now, thousands of chosen ones around the world are watching this message, feeling the same fire you feel, carrying the same burden you carry, fighting the same battles you fight. We are a family. We are a community. We are warriors standing together in the army of the Most High God. And God, your Father, your Creator, your Defender, He hasn't forgotten you. Even in your darkest hour, even when the walls look impossibly high, even when your faith feels as small as a mustard seed, He is working behind the scenes, orchestrating victories you cannot yet see, preparing breakthroughs that will leave you speechless. So let me ask you this final question. Will you trust Him for 1 more lap? Will you choose faith over fear, hope over despair, His voice over the enemy's lies? Will you remember who you are when the world tries to make you forget? Before I release you into your destiny, I want to pray over you. If you're able, I want you to place your hand over your heart as I speak these words over your life. Almighty God, Creator of heaven and earth, the one who breathed stars into existence and carved mountains with your fingertips, I lift up every chosen one hearing this prayer right now. Father, they have walked through valleys that tried to break them. They have faced giants that tried to intimidate them. They have endured seasons that tried to steal their hope. But Lord, they are still here. They are still standing. They are still believing. I pray that you would wrap your arms around them right now like a father embracing a weary child. Let them feel your presence in this moment. Let them know beyond any shadow of doubt that they are loved, they are chosen, they are treasured, they are not forgotten. God, I pray for supernatural strength to rise up within them. Where they have grown weary, restore their energy. Where they have lost hope, reignite their faith. Where they have questioned their worth, remind them they are fearfully and wonderfully made. Where they have felt alone, surround them with your presence and this community of believers who understand their journey. Lord, I declare that their day 7 is approaching. I declare that their walls are about to fall. I declare that what the enemy meant for harm, you are turning for good. I declare that their story is not over. The best chapters are still being written. Open doors that no man can shut. Provide resources they never expected. Send divine connections that will accelerate their destiny. Heal what has been broken. Restore what has been stolen. Vindicate what has been questioned. And Father, protect them from the voice of the enemy in these final moments before breakthrough. Let them hear your voice above all others. Let them walk in confidence, knowing they are your beloved children, your chosen warriors, your vessels of honor, in the mighty, matchless, unshakable name of Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen. If this message has stirred something deep within your spirit, I want you to know that this conversation doesn't end here. In the comments below, share one word that describes what God is awakening in you. Is it courage? Is it hope? Is it purpose? Let this community see your heart and pray with you. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, someone who's been walking in circles, someone who's forgotten who they are, someone who's ready to quit on day 6, please share this video with them. Sometimes we are the angels God sends to remind His chosen ones that they are not alone. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. Your hunger for truth, your willingness to wrestle with these deep mysteries, your commitment to growth, it tells me everything I need to know about your heart. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell. We are building a community of awakened believers, and your voice matters in this movement. Remember, chosen one, the fire within you cannot be extinguished. Your origin is divine. Your destiny is secured. Your victory is certain. Now go and walk as who you truly are.